Welcome back to the 10-second Runoff powered by Culture Media with your hosts Joe Mitchell, Alec Escade, and producer Magic Mike Ishiaza. Behind the camera yet again. We are waiting on that fourth camera. We'll get him his own shot moving forward.
Soon.
I don't think we should. I think we just leave it how it is.
No, I put it on the story, man. That comeback's going to be worthy of a field storming.
That's good. Oh my God.
Come on now.
We'll see.
Come on now. Look, in the first show of the week, we covered the new coaches poll, some fall camp news with LSU, Ohio State, Florida State, potentially more expansion with the ACC. But this week, we're getting back to our record predictions. So we're getting into Washington, Oregon, and Utah. How do you like the intro with no screw-ups that time? I went straight through.
Yeah, that was good. Now let's also talk about, if we're talking screw-ups, let's talk screw-ups.
Okay.
We're already filmed this show.
That's true.
Yeah, and we mentioned it on the last pod. We were like, well, we did film it, and this will be the second time going through it, so that'll be
that's on me, guys.
twice as good.
That mess up was on me. I'll take that one on the chin.
And that's why you don't have a camera.
That's why
exactly. I messed up once and they took my camera away.
Mikey erased everything we have. Everybody look at him. Like, no, dude,
can't look at me.
we're not doing that. Crazy.
All right, so the first team we need to get into is Washington.
Right.
So they got a couple guys that are preseason all-conference. That's Rome Oduns. Jalen McMillan got subbed.
I think it's Oduns.
Oduns? Mm-hmm. Well, one way or another. You know who
He's preseason All-American.
You knew who I was talking about. Preseason all-conference. Yeah. Jalen McMillan got snubbed. Thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, the dude's a top 10 receiver. Why he – yeah. Well, I don't know. To not be an honorable mention as a top 10 receiver is kind of screwed.
Well, I didn't say he wasn't an honorable mention. I said he wasn't preseason all-conference.
Oh, all-conference, yeah, that's absurd. That's one of the bigger snubs I've heard.
Yeah. And then they had Troy Faltano at left tackle and then Braylon Trice off the edge. Those are their three all-conference guys preseason. The other offensive tackle was an honorable mention. The linebacker room is solid. And everyone listed
Penix,
everyone listed as a starter has 3 or more years of experience.
Yeah.
Like all at least redshirt sophomores all the way up to graduates.
Sounds like you're pretty high on Washington, huh?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Very high on Washington.
Okay.
Look, this is a really, really good team. Michael Penix Jr., he was the second leading passer in all the country last year. First in the Power 5. Austin Reed,
in other words, he was the leading passer in the country, right?
Yeah, Austin Reed was the leading passer in terms of yardage, but he plays at Western Kentucky. That is a G5 school. No shot against him, but the level of competition is just different.
Yeah.
So
they're saying he didn't lead the NFL in passing, Michael Penix. Like, you can't take that away from him.
Right. As far as running back, I think this is the weakest point of Washington's team. Mm-hmm. None of the top 3 backs in that backfield are coming off a season with more than 600 yards.
Yeah, and of course that's also to the Michael Penix point we just made, right?
Yeah.
It's difficult to have that, 1 with a split backfield, 2 with a quarterback that goes for 1 billion yards.
Yeah. I want to say he had 4,500 yards or something like that last year.
46, I think, yeah.
46, yeah, because he did have more than Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
This is going to be a high-powered, explosive offense. The question is that running back room, and then defensively, are they going to be able to keep teams to less than 40? Because that's what it comes down to in the Pac-12.
Yeah, because they're going to score that many points, but it's just like last year, right? With USC even too. You have to, in Tennessee last year, right?
Yeah.
You got to keep teams to less than 40. But if you're scoring 40 a night, you're doing something. Right?
Yeah.
And so what is your level of concern with their defense?
Honestly, they got a bunch of guys back. They bring in Jabbar Muhammad at the one of the cornerback positions. So just getting in there and having the chemistry with the defense, that could be interesting to see. But he's projected as a starter. I think that's going to be fine. I just don't think the level of defense is to that of Oregon State, Utah. Yeah. So, just they're going to have to go out and score a lot of points in those games, and we'll get to their record or their schedule in just a second.
Right.
But that's really the concern there. Is just, are they going to be able to – I don't necessarily have a position group in particular that I'm worried about per se.
To me, it would be the front 7, right? I think the secondary can keep up, right? To me, it's the front 7 being the problem. If you can't get pressure, you're not doing a whole lot.
But then again, like I said, they had a defensive end in Braylon Trice, who he was preseason all-conference, and then they had 2 linebackers, preseason all-conference honorable mention.
Right.
So the front, like I said, there's not a real worry or concern about any specific group on that defense, but the defense as a whole, in terms of scoring defense, look, if they're not top 50. We
got problems.
Could be trouble.
Yeah.
So,
even with a top 5, top 10 offense scoring wise,
yeah,
it's tough.
Yeah. So let's get into the schedule. September 2nd, they open up versus Boise State. I think that's a win.
Right.
Look, the first two games, it's Boise State and Tulsa, both at home. I'm going to go ahead and just
take them for both, right?
Both wins. Week 3, on September 16th, they go to Michigan State. Thoughts here?
Yeah, I got them winning that game. I don't know. I don't really know what to think about Michigan State this year. I don't think they're going to be all that. I don't think they're quite back to their stride. However, I think they're getting there.
Yeah.
But I mean, Washington is.
They better be. They better be. They paid Mel Tucker everything.
Exactly. An arm and a leg, and their conference is nuts, and it's only getting better.
Yeah.
Right. Including Washington super shortly. Mm-hmm. But with that being said, I mean, Washington is in their stride. They're gonna. It's not going to be too close, I don't think. 17, 21 points.
Yeah, I'm with you. This was a game last year that, again, happened early in the season. And Michigan State at the time was ranked 11th, I want to say. They were ranked 11th. But if I'm remembering correctly, I may be off base here, but I believe Washington led the country in sacks up until that point.
Right.
And so we were looking at that game, and the odds were that Michigan State was going to win and this, that, and the other. And we took Washington in a big win.
Right.
We both did. And then obviously we saw that happen. I want to say they won by 20 some odd points.
Yeah.
So I don't think I don't think it will be projected to be as close of a game as it was projected to be last year. And I think you see more of the same.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think enough has changed to say any differently.
Yeah. And then week 4, they get Cal at home. That's a win.
Duh, yeah.
Week 5, they go to Arizona. That's a win.
For sure.
So they go into the bye.
Two of the worst teams in the Pac-12.
So they go into the bye early October, 5-0, and come out of the bye to Oregon. October 14th, they get Oregon at home. This one's tricky. What are your thoughts here?
I got them beating Oregon.
Yeah.
I think this is tough, man, because Oregon being one of the better Pac-12 defenses, and I'm not going to jump super far into it because we're going to get to Oregon. But I don't think they can keep up. Washington's going to score a whole lot of points.
So the obvious answer is this can go one of two ways. They either win or lose. Duh.
Okay.
But the
that
reason,
was a hot take.
No, that's why I said duh.
Right.
That's obvious. But I want to get into that further because I think it comes down to more than that.
Okay.
If Washington jumps out to an early lead, it's on. Washington's going to win this game, and they're maybe by two or more possessions.
Yeah.
If Oregon can get a stop early and ride the back of Bucky Irving, it's going to be trouble for Washington.
Yeah, I agree. And that's kind of the problem, right? To me, when I was talking about the front seven earlier, that's kind of your issue. You do have some pretty good backs in the Pac-12. Bucky Irving definitely being the best of them. I don't love that for Washington's front seven. But again, when you can take that out of the game and make it to where it doesn't matter, well, you're winning, and a lot of times, like you said, in grand fashion. So with that being said, yeah, I mean, I'm taking Washington in this one for sure.
I am going to take Washington as well. I said there is a very clear path for Oregon to win this game. It's going to be by the legs of Bucky Irving and that offensive line. Bo Nix can extend some plays for you. He's a solid quarterback. Nothing against him. But I don't think they'll be able to keep up with the explosiveness that Washington brings to the table.
Yeah, and look, I don't know that they're a better team than Oregon is. To me, the matchup is there for Washington.
Yeah,
that's the key. So.
Yep. Okay, so they're 6-0, getting Arizona State at home.
Win.
And then they go to Stanford again. I think another win.
Yeah, and that one's not going to be close either. A lot of these teams that they play, their not strong schedule is very, very poor. So when you're talking about Arizona State, Washington, they'll get Washington State. Like their non-big games are very, very small. Is my point.
Yeah.
That's kind of the nature of the Pac-12.
So at this point, we have them stepping into November. So they've gotten out of September and October, unblemished.
Right.
They're 8-0 going into November, and they go to USC.
Yeah, that's rough.
Is this their first L?
Yes. Yeah, I have USC winning this one. We've gone over USC before. To me, again, it's kind of a bad matchup. There are a lot of teams in the country that happen to play each other every year that are very similar football teams. There's always going to be a better game plan, right? So, like, you look at a team like when we talked about it, of course, a billion times, like Penn State and Michigan. They play each other every year, and they have very similar schematic teams. They build their teams the same way. USC and Washington are very similar in that way as well. Well, not to those two, but you know what I mean. They're similar in that they build them the same way. I don't think they can keep up. Kind of like I said, I mean, it's kind of a situation like you said where USC ends up scoring first and starts running away. Washington's not going to be able to keep up the pace.
Yeah. I disagree with you. I understand the sentiment that, you don't want to try and beat somebody at their own game. It's very difficult to do, especially when you got the Heisman at quarterback. You have guys all over the field, playmakers all over the field for USC. But I think the same can be said about Washington.
I agree.
I'm not sleeping on Michael Penix Jr. I'm not sleeping on that wide receiver room. Outside of Ohio State, that may be the best wide receiver room in the country.
I don't think there's any argument with that at all.
There's, you could throw in Texas in terms of receivers, not necessarily wide receivers, but pass catchers.
Right. You could throw in Georgia.
You could throw in Georgia. Yeah. There's a couple teams.
Florida State makes a great argument.
There's a couple teams in the mix there, but I think Washington's up there with them. I think outside of Ohio State, there's certainly an argument to be made about Washington having the best wide receiver room.
I would agree.
So I'm not discounting them that. I know you said you don't want to beat USC at their own, or it's going to be difficult to beat USC at their own game, but I think this may end up being more of Washington's game this year.
Right. And I will say, I mean, that like Utah did it last year. Mm-hmm. We saw Utah, and I know we're going to get to them too, and it sucks, but I'm going to talk about it here anyway. So, like, we saw Utah beat them, of course, twice last year, USC that is, and they did it in two different ways, which to me was, marvelous, right? Just super impressive. I don't think Washington has the capacity to do so. And again, it's not because I think I think USC is a better football team. I don't know that they end up doing better this year. Of course, we're going to get into that because I assume in this one we'll talk about, the Pac-12 championship, that kind of stuff. But with that being said, no, I have USC taking a very, very close one.
So look, there is some questions with both teams defensively in terms of where they're going to end up ranking-wise in terms of scoring defense. And you have to give the edge to USC in terms of the turnover game.
Yes.
At least last year you did. So if that holds, it could be real interesting. If Washington comes out and throws a pick or two or puts the ball on the turf, then you very, very well could see USC win this game. But I think with a clean game from Washington, which I'm going to expect from a quarterback that leads the Power 5 in passing yards, and I know he has more attempts, but you don't lead the Power 5 in passing yards by throwing a bunch of picks.
I'm with you.
You need the ball in your hands a lot. You need to throw the ball a lot. And so for that to be the case, you're going to have a small amount of turnovers.
Now, yes. I think he'll be able to do so, right? I think USC is going to score so quick. And that's another big thing, right? Having the ball in your hands a lot. Your defense has to suck.
The game's going to be in the 40s.
Oh, both teams. I agree wholeheartedly. Now, the key is, though, we had kind of talked about it, right, that if he's going to be throwing the ball a lot, I have almost equal confidence in the quarterbacks. I'm going to give Caleb Williams a slight edge. I think he's a little bit better. And I'll leave that there. I'll table that. Now, as far as defenses are concerned, I'm going to give them equal, right? But again, like you mentioned, it's the turnover side of things. Mm-hmm. So if you're taking the lesser of two quarterbacks, I'm not going to say the worst quarterback because neither of them are worse.
Right.
The lesser of the two great quarterbacks and facing him against the better defense turnover-wise, Michael Penix Jr. is going to throw something like 60 footballs in this game. Well, if that's the case, right, and he turns it over just twice, by the way, it's a pretty decent ratio. Like I'm saying, that's not that bad, right?
Right.
Even if he does turn it over twice, you give Caleb Williams 2 extra possessions, I don't know how you're screwed, right? That's exactly what you don't want to do. And if that's the case, again, I'm giving the slight edge to USC.
Yeah. Defensively, USC should be better this year. They went and attacked the transfer portal. They have a lot of talent in that on the defense. Yeah. I know USC fans get all over me because I'm not sold on their defense. I get it. But Alex Grinch had talent at Oklahoma. Not the best talent in the world, but he had talent at Oklahoma, and he's had talent at USC. Until he does it, I'm not sold.
I'm with you. And just to aid to that fact, right? Why would we have confidence in USC's defense?
Yeah.
I guess you could point to the turnovers and say, well, look, turnover heavy defense. That's all they need to do because they give it to Caleb Williams and look how many games they won and all that cool stuff. That doesn't make their defense good.
Right.
They still give up a ton of points. If you don't have Caleb Williams at the helm, you're in deep shit.
Yeah.
So why would I look at this USC defense and think they're going to be any better this year?
So
I'm with you, right? But do you think they're going to be good this year or even decent this year?
Yeah.
Better, yes. Decent, no.
So you're giving USC the win?
Slightly, yeah.
Slightly. I'm giving Washington a slight win.
Okay,
yeah.
Fair enough.
Could go either way, though.
I agree.
It's a coin toss game. So I have them at this point. I have them 9-0. You have them 8-0. I mean, they're a top 10, probably top 5 team at this point. Would have went over USC
Probably,
with wins over
6,
USC
7.
and Oregon in my book, with splitting Oregon and USC in yours. In your case, they're probably more top 10. In my case, they're probably
9,
top
10.
5.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
November 11th, they get Utah at home.
Yeah, I have Utah winning that game as well. Which, yeesh, man, it's tough for a team to go undefeated for so long and drop 2 back-to-back. Now we are talking about USC and Utah.
Granted, I had Washington winning.
Right. Wait, which one? I'm talking about me.
Yeah.
Well, wait. Predict the game real quick.
I have Utah winning this one.
Okay,
yeah, I have Utah winning this one.
I agree. Reason being is because Utah, again, it's going to point to what I had last year, right? If I'm looking at USC and Washington as the same team, and I'm not, but the same kind of team, Utah's going to play your game. They are the kind of team because of how well coached they are, because of how disciplined they are, because of the lack of penalties, the surplus of turnovers they create, they're nuts how well-rounded they are. They can beat you at your game, or if you play their game, well, that's their game. They're going to beat you, right? Yeah. And by virtue, they win a whole lot of freaking football games, right?
Yeah.
And of course, we're going to get to Utah, but they impress me a whole lot. I think they beat Washington in their game. I don't think this is going to be a high-scoring game like it was for the first USC-Utah game. To me, this is going to be more of a and this is going to sound crazy after what I just said, but like a 38-31 kind of game. Yes, that's high-scoring, but I'm talking about two crazy, right? So like a 38-31, something like that. Holding them, maybe getting a couple like late possessions, whatever it is.
Yeah. Now, look, I also said I have Utah winning this one, and honestly, more of the same. I think they win it playing their own style of game. Very similar to the first USC game last year, like you said. Their leading pass catcher last year was Dalton Kincaid. He's obviously in the NFL now. But going into the season, Brent Keithy was the starter at tight end. Right. And he was for the 3 years prior as well. Yeah. There's a reason this guy started over Dalton Kincaid, and Dalton Kincaid was the prospect that he was. He was fantastic, amazing. Hell, he's on my fantasy team now. Right. Like, he's a really, really
You're welcome.
Great player. You did trade me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think what they're gonna do is they're gonna attack the middle of the field vertically with the tight end and Brent Keithy. They bring in Micah Pittman at wide receiver. They're really giving Cam Rising a lot of talent to go throw to now and trying to compete with the high-powered offenses of the Pac-12. And I say they're trying to create a scenario where they can compete with those high-powered offenses, but
like they haven't already.
But they're coming off back-to-back Pac-12 championships already, playing their own style of game. So whenever you create a scenario where this team, who is a back-to-back Pac-12 champion, can now go out and hit these extremely talented targets all over the field and still play their defensive style game, it's dangerous, man.
And not to mention I don't think I'm crazy in saying they have the best offensive line in the conference. Yeah. So Lord, you pair all those things, and of course you have exactly what we talked about. A back-to-back Pac-12 champion who is, I'm not going to say primed to win it again, but definitely in the driver's seat, right, at this moment. So we'll see how it goes. But again, we both have them beating Washington.
They also have the longest tenured head coach in
college football.
Is it all of college football now with Whittingham? So it's going to be really hard for me to give Utah a loss here. Is there a way Washington can win? Absolutely,
for sure.
But I got to go Utah.
Yeah, this is not a boat race in my book.
All right, so you have Washington coming off back-to-back losses to USC and Utah. November 18th, they go to Oregon State.
Yeah, I have them winning that one in a close one. That's tough. It's so funny because there's certain molds you could put teams in, right? I put Oregon State, and Utah kind of in the same mold. I think Oregon State is the lesser of the three teams, although we've seen them pull off some crazy stuff like they did last year. But to me, it's tough. They can't do to Washington what I think Utah can do to Washington. They can't go score a bunch of points / hold Washington. Although they do have a great defense. Hold Washington enough, right? So this, to me, right, is going to be a similar game to the Washington-Utah game, but flipped. So to me, this is a 38-24 kind of score. Washington takes it.
So I actually have Oregon State winning this one.
Yeah.
So You had Washington dropping back-to-back games to USC and Utah. I have them dropping 2 games to Utah and Oregon State.
Back-to-back, right.
So both back-to-back. In my case, it's a little more frustrating for a fan base because they started out 9-0 and then dropped 2.
Yeah, that hurts.
Now, in the Pac-12, that's still very much in the running for the conference championship.
No doubt.
For the conference championship. I'm with you. I'm with you in most of your analysis. I disagree in the outcome. I think Oregon State's defense is just going to be too much. I think they're going to get home far too often on Washington.
Right.
I think they're going to have a lot of second and long, third and long type plays. Now, Michael Penix Jr. in that receiving room is the receiving room I would want if they're gonna go have to convert those.
Yeah.
But I think Oregon State's just going to do a really good job of getting out in front in terms of down and distance.
Yeah, and you got to let those receivers work. If they don't have time to work, it's tough.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the last game of the year, November 25th versus Washington State at home. I think that's a win.
Oh my God, I think they blow them out the water.
Yeah. So we both have them 10-2, just losing. We both have them losing to Utah, and then you have them losing to USC. I have them losing to Oregon State.
Yep.
So where does this put them for you?
Let's finish it, and then we'll
come back. Okay.
Sure.
So let's get into Oregon then. September 2nd, they opened up versus Portland State. Win.
Yeah.
September 9th, they go to Texas Tech.
Yeah, so I know Texas Tech's going to be decent this year, maybe even better than that. I'm going to take Oregon in this one. I think they're the better football team, but I don't think this is going to be a crazy blowout, right?
Yeah.
I think we checked the odds a couple of weeks ago, and it was a three-point swing, right? I think these odds will continue to swing a little bit in Oregon's favor, but again, I don't think this is a 14 to 21 point victory. I think they keep it close enough for 7-10.
Yeah, I could certainly see that, but I think Texas Tech is going to be a really good team this year. Yeah. I really believe in Tyler Show. So, do I think Oregon wins this game? Yes, but I have it marked as a struggle win.
Right.
I think this is one that's going to go back and forth for far too long, way longer than it should. I think Texas Tech is a team that finds their way into the rankings midway through the year. And it's going to end up being a really good win for Oregon, but it's going to feel like oh my God, yeah, we got to get it together before we get into the back half of the season.
Right.
I feel like that's going to be the pulse of the fan base at the time, but they're going to look back in November and be like, that Texas Tech one was actually a really good win.
Right.
September 16th versus Hawaii, win.
Easy.
September 23rd versus Colorado, win.
Yeah, bad.
We're going win here, obviously, because we don't know anything about Colorado other than they brought in Deion Sanders and also lost and replaced their entire roster.
Other than they could quadruple their win total. I'm sorry, they could quintuple their win total and still miss a bowl game.
Miss a bowl game, yeah.
So there's nothing to talk about there. That's a win.
I'm with you. Colorado's a team we should talk about later, but the reason that we haven't and probably won't for the next couple of weeks is because we don't know anything about them. Like I said, they bring in all these guys. That's a team that we're going to have to see. We're going to
make sure to jump on it in the season, but
yeah, we're going to have to see them play to know what to expect.
Yeah.
September 30th at Stanford. I think that's a win. Yeah. So again, this is a team that's 5-0 going into their bye. They come out of the bye versus Washington. They come out of the bye versus Washington, and we both already talked about this game. We both think they lose.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. Washington, I do believe Washington's a better football team.
You do?
Yeah.
In the Washington segment, you said you weren't necessarily saying Washington was the better football team. You just saw them.
No, than USC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, let's go ahead and break it down because if they're an Oregon fan and they're just watching a clip.
Yes, great point.
They're just watching a clip.
So, this is a rough one. This is definitely going to be a close game for sure. We talked about a little bit earlier that if Washington gets up early, it's going to be tough for Oregon to catch up, right? Oregon wants to control it with defense because that is something glaring that they have as such an advantage over Washington, and is going to be the defensive side of the ball. We talked about the trouble, right? It could be real big trouble. If Oregon goes up 10-0, it's over, and it might get bad. Because if without the ball in Michael Penix Jr.'s hands all the time, it's tough, right? That's the lifeblood of their team.
Yeah, especially behind Bucky Irving like
exactly.
that. If Oregon can find a way to get up early, get a stop over Washington early, 1 or 2 stops early,
right,
then they can just hammer time of possession and run it on Washington for the remainder of the game.
Yeah.
Now,
with 30, 40 carries from the running back. Yeah.
Now, on the flip side of that coin, you're still playing Michael Penix Jr. in that amazing wide receiver room.
Right.
That's a team that can score quickly, and 10 points really is nothing. That's 7 minutes of game time to be right back in the mix.
Right.
So if they do get up, they have to maintain the time of possession, and they have to stick to the run game. Look, like we said, we both took Washington to win this game, but there is a clear path for Oregon.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Again, I think Washington's a better football team, but this is just a rough kind of matchup here.
Yeah.
But again, there is a clear path for Oregon to win this game for sure.
Yeah. All right, October 21st, they get Washington State at home. Win. October 28th, they go to Utah.
That's tough. What do you have?
I have them losing. I have Oregon losing to Utah. Again, same thing. I think Utah is just going to attack them. They're going to be able to attack the middle of the field with the tight end.
Yeah.
Cam Rising is an experienced guy. He may not be the most talented quarterback in the country. He's not, not in the mix to win Heisman preseason, but he's a guy with experience and the ability to go win a football game for you.
Right.
He got the 2 big wins against USC last year. He's won the conference now twice. So this is a guy that if I have to pick a quarterback if I have to pick the most talented quarterback in the country, I'm not going to pick Cam Rising. If I have to pick a guy that I want leading my football team, I'm picking Cam Rising.
Right.
And so I don't know. It's a tricky one. I think the defenses are really almost evenly matched. I got to go Utah here. You disagreed though.
Yeah. I gotta take Oregon. This was a tough one for me. To me, these are teams, again, I've talked about it over and over for the clip, right? These are 2 very similar football teams. Teams that are very well coached. I mean, Dan Lanning, in a different way than Whittingham, he's nuts. As far as defensive minds, one of the best defensive minds in football. And they have a great defense. They're going to have a great defense. They're recruiting out the ass. It's nuts what they're doing. But, Utah's really good. I just think Oregon matches up a little bit better. I have Oregon doing some pretty big things this year, and for me to be correct, they need to win this game, and this needs to be a fashion win, right? I want to see a 14-point win here from Oregon, and I think it's doable. I think the biggest thing here is, right, and yes, we had Washington win it, whatever, but to me, Bo Nix and Cam Rising, right, they, again, similar quarterbacks, right? I think Bo Nix makes it happen with his legs.
Cam Rising has that ability as well.
No doubt, and there's no doubt. But I think Bo Nix will be the difference in this one. I think you better have a massive game, and I think I'm looking for a statement win here.
Okay, so I have Oregon 6-2 going into November. You have them 7-1 at this point.
Yep.
Opening up November, they get Cal at home. I think that's a win
for sure.
And then November 11th, they get USC at home.
Yeah. I have them beating USC as well. This is a tough one for sure. Again, Oregon fans, y'all are gonna love me. That's bold, but I do have them beating USC. The path, right? You may be wondering. Similar to Washington, again, this is a rough one because I have Washington winning. I think Bo Nix could be another big factor in this game, but again, the big thing for me here is the defense. Holding them is a tough task. I think the defense can rise to the occasion and get it done in a way that's, dare I say, 31-24 or something like that. To me, this will be the big hiccup in USC's season. A definite blip, not only a loss, but a low-scoring loss. So I think they'll have Caleb Williams turn it over a couple times, get him rattled, and win the game ultimately.
Yeah. You said this is a rough prediction for you. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree that Oregon wins. I don't necessarily agree that it's a rough prediction.
Yeah.
All the buzz about USC is the talent on their offense, obviously returning the Heisman. Bo Nix is a great
That helps.
It certainly helps.
Yeah.
Bo Nix is a great quarterback, but Troy Franklin and Tez Johnson, both 850-plus yard receivers.
Yeah.
Bucky Irving, 1,000-yard running back. But more importantly, to me, in this matchup, on the defensive front, Popo Amave, he missed last year, but he was first all Pac-12 as a sophomore.
Yeah.
This is a guy that's going to be able to get home and really disrupt that. He's going to – I think for USC to win this game, Caleb Williams is going to have to live outside of the pocket. Now, Is that something you necessarily want as an Oregon fan? Maybe not. He is the Heisman. Like he's certainly got the ability to extend plays and he's got that ability. But I think the overarching point here is Oregon's going to get to him. They're going to bring the pressure and force mistakes, like you said.
I think Oregon's got the secondary not to specifically prefer him out the pocket. I don't think anybody prefers him out the pocket because of his Mahomes-esque like playmaking ability.
Yeah.
However, I think you make the game one-dimensional with a defensive, like a great defensive tackle and a great defensive line like Oregon has. Caleb Williams, I'm not gonna say gets in trouble because again he can make plays, he can still make things happen but being one-dimensional is rough, especially when you don't have really the receiver talent that you may like, right? Like in Ohio State, like honestly, like in Oregon, right? Mm-hmm. I think I'm taking Oregon's receiving core over USC's as it sits, right? So yeah, this is a tough one for me, but I understand and do agree that Oregon is going to take this one.
Yeah, and with a guy like Caleb Williams, it's very easy to say, like, do you want him out the pocket? Do you want him to have to sit in the pocket? Well, of course you want him out. You want to pressure him, and you want to make him make decisions. Look, if a quarterback is really good at making decisions quickly, that doesn't mean you don't make him make decisions quickly.
Right, exactly.
You would much rather do that than give him all day, especially with the talent that he has.
Absolutely.
So get to him, bring the pressure, make him make a decision, and make him screw up once or twice.
Yeah.
If that's the case, you can ride the back of Bucky Irving. You can pound it as long as you would like. Hey, if they put 7-8 in the box, use the receivers that you have. You got two guys with 850 plus yards.
It's still harder to throw outside the pocket on a run than it is to not. Right?
Yeah.
No matter who you are. So yeah, you want him running. Yeah.
I think going into this game, USC will be favored in all the books, but I'm going to ride Oregon.
I agree with both of those statements.
Yeah. November 18th at Arizona State. I think that's a win.
I agree.
And then November 24th, Oregon State. I think that's a win.
I think it's a win.
I think they get their get back from last year.
I think it might get ugly for sure. Ugly as in chippy. I think it'll definitely get chippy. But I think they win this one big.
Yeah, so I had them having 2 losses before November. You had them with 1 loss before November. And we didn't have them dropping any more through.
Right.
So, that could be, if it plays out that way, that would be a really big November and have them sitting there at 10-2 with Washington.
Yeah.
And look, we covered USC.
Or 11-1 in my opinion.
Yeah, 11-1 in your opinion. So ahead of Washington. But we covered USC a while back, and I had them 9-3. You had them 10-2. So regardless, however you want to look at it, we both have Oregon sitting above USC at the end of the season.
Right.
Okay, let's get to Utah.
Yeah. So we didn't really cover much of Oregon's team, but
yeah, we did.
We covered a lot of it beforehand, before the schedule breakdown.
Yeah.
And honestly, Utah's too. So, but man, Utah's incredible. What they and I guess again, I've already said this for the long form people, but for the clip, right? The biggest thing for me with Utah last year and honestly year after year is they'll beat you at your own game, or if you want to play theirs, good luck, right?
Yeah.
We talked about last year USC, obviously having to play them twice sucks, right? You're playing the Heisman twice, to not only beat them twice, which again incredible, to beat them twice in 2 different fashions is nuts to me. Okay, y'all want to make it a shootout? I will win a shootout with the Heisman, right? Or you wanna do whatever not a shootout, right? Or some kind of close, stand and bang kind of game per se, where they still score 40 points, right?
Yeah.
Utah is very impressive, very disciplined. That wins them a lot of games. We talked about, they have probably the best offensive line in the conference. That's how you win football games.
Yeah. A couple transfers to watch for Utah. Levani Damuni, linebacker, he's going to be really solid. I think he's going to be right there in the starting mix. I mentioned him earlier in the episode, but Micah Pittman at wide receiver from Florida State. That's a huge target to add for Cam Rising to go out and get to. And then Miles Battle in the defensive backfield from Ole Miss.
It's just the fact that if your last name is Battle and you're a DB, you're good at football.
Yeah, and probably played in the SEC at some point.
Yeah. And he did.
Yeah, he did. Here's one thing about Utah that I think everyone not in the Pac-12 or specifically a fan of Utah is misunderstanding.
Right.
If you're a fan of an ACC school or a Big Ten school or an SEC school, whatever it may be, you're looking at Utah and saying their main pass catcher last year and really the lifeblood of that offense was Dalton Kincaid down the stretch. Now that he's gone, what's that Utah offense going to look like?
Right.
Hey, it's going to look like it did the 3 years prior.
Right.
Brant Kuithe is no joke. If you're a fan of Utah, you know that. He's got a few all-conference awards under his belt. He's returning for his 6th year, and there's a reason he started over Dalton Kincaid.
Right.
He's solid. As good of a player as Dalton Kincaid was, as high as he went in the draft.
Possibly better.
Kuithe is the real deal.
Yeah.
I expect him to get a large portion of the target share this year. I expect them to attack the middle of the field and make opposing linebackers and safeties really respect him. And I think that opens up the pass game, especially adding a guy like Micah Pittman.
And the RPO game. That's something that Cam Rising and that coaching staff is huge on. Especially with him having the legs he does. When you're able to open up the middle of the field and get linebackers quite literally turning their back, yeesh, you get past that first line, you're going for 10 plus. Cam Rising gets on his feet and it's trouble. So the
RPO game, if they go the route that you're saying that it would open up, it's going to really rely on Jaquindon Jackson. He enters his first season as a full-time running back. He's a converted quarterback. So this is the first time we're really going to see him in that position. I'm interested to see how it plays out, but I don't entirely know what to expect.
Yeah, with no clue. I know a lot of quarterbacks that would be pretty good running backs. Maybe he's one of them, right? So
yeah. All right, let's go. Let's look at the schedule. So August 31st. So I mean, this month, I'm hyped. We get football here in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
On a Thursday, baby.
Yeah.
That's hard.
So August 31st versus Florida. They lost this game last year in the swamp.
Yeah. I think
Here we go.
Yeah. I did predict that one for those counting. Sorry, Utah fans. But I do have y'all winning this year, which is big. I think it could be close, right? It is the most safe thing in my mind to say, and I know it doesn't really come down to this in sports. Sans Anthony Richardson last year, they lose, and I don't know that it's super close. I believe he ran for 3. I know he didn't throw for 1, but that 2-point conversion was magic. Without Anthony Richardson, that's tough. Florida's quarterback troubles, I'm going to call them troubles, but uncertainty, right, is scary, right? So I'm definitely looking at Utah to win this one.
Yeah, so you said without Anthony Richardson last year, Utah wins.
Yeah.
Even with Anthony Richardson, Utah was in a position to win the game late.
Absolutely.
They were inside the 10, and it was an interception at the goal line that sealed the deal for Florida. I think more so than Anthony Richardson, that's just the swamp effect.
Yeah.
That's being on the road at a rowdy SEC school.
Game 1, everybody's getting up for a top 10 opponent, unranked team. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, everyone can agree that Utah was a far better team than Florida last year. And you get them at home, and they don't have Anthony Richardson. I don't think this one's close.
No, me either. Now, granted, it's psychological things, the home side. Utah's not bringing what the swamp brings. You're not getting that kind of home field advantage.
No, I agree, but I
think
it
is psychological. You don't have to go. You don't have to. There's a lot of other stuff that goes into it.
But I think the difference in the game last year, and especially on that last offensive play at the goal line, the crowd really gets to you. The pressure gets to you in that moment. Not saying you can't handle the pressure. I mean the physical pressure of the defensive line and the pocket closing, mixed with looking into a sea of blue and orange and the volume level and all that.
Right.
That's all out the window.
Right.
That's not there this year.
Right.
So I think this is a minimum 2-possession win.
Agreed.
September 9th, they go to Baylor. I think this is a win, but I don't think it is a blowout. I think Baylor is a much better team this year than they were last year.
This is the Oregon-Texas Tech game almost, right?
Yeah.
This is a game that could be, I'm not going to say shaky. I don't think it's a blowout, but I think they handle business.
Yeah.
But I think this is one of those games that's like, guys, all right, like good win, right? But let's clean up some stuff. This is going to be – and let's talk about it too, right? We're talking about these other 2 teams that will be competing with Utah in order to win this conference, in order for a really good chance at a playoff shot. Whoever's coming out of this conference, maybe with 1 loss, maybe with 2 as a champion, has a shot at the playoffs, right?
So we've never seen it. We've never seen a two-loss team in the playoff.
But this year almost paved the way for it. But anyway, right? So, right. I also assume there's going to be a 1-loss champion here. But anyway, with that said, right, these 2 games coming out the gate are they have the hardest schedule in the Pac-12. Yes, they're the back-to-back champion, but playing Florida and Baylor is so rough.
And also, we'll get to the remainder of their schedule, but going to Baylor, going to Oregon State, going to USC, going to Washington, that's tough.
Yeah, there's nothing good about that. But yeah, I mean, I think they handle business at Baylor. But man, that's kudos to them for scheduling Florida Baylor, not only back to back, but those are their out of conference.
Mm-hmm. And first 2 of the year.
Yeah.
I think Baylor's going to be much improved defensively.
I would agree.
And when I look at this game, I think Utah is in the driver's seat throughout. I don't think this game's ever in question, but they can't put them away until late in the game.
Yeah.
I just feel like Baylor's a team that's not necessarily going to go away in this one, but I do think it's a win.
Yeah.
September 16th, Weber State.
For sure. Dub.
September 23rd, UCLA at home. This is another game that I have Utah winning, but I'm interested to see what's going on with UCLA.
Yeah.
I clearly can't pick UCLA. They're very likely going to start a freshman in Dante Moore.
They are, yeah.
Now, that freshman is one of the best quarterbacks out of last year's class.
Right.
And he's being coached by Chip Kelly, one of the best quarterback minds in the country.
Right.
UCLA is I feel like there's just this opinion that now that Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Jake Bobo and Zach Charbonnet, I feel like the opinion that now that all those guys are gone, they're just going to fall off. I think that's absurd. I don't think UCLA wins this game, but UCLA is not a team that's going to ever win less than 7 games. Now, 7 games is mediocre. It's decent. It's nothing to call home about.
Right,
but
right.
At the same time, they're not a bad team, and they're capable of beating really good teams.
Just not Utah.
They just won't on September 23rd.
Yeah. The key here too is and this is also nuts, right? Like USC, again, not world beaters. I'm sorry, UCLA, again, not world beaters, but neither of the other 2 teams will ever have them, right? So you schedule 2 out of conference like that, and then just 2 games later, you have UCLA. Like, damn, bro.
And that's a tricky team, man. This is going to be one of the more talented quarterbacks. Like, Dante Moore, maybe not this season, but before he leaves or I don't want to say before he leaves UCLA in the age of the transfer portal, I have no clue if he stays, but before he enters the draft, he will be in the conversation for the Heisman.
Absolutely.
He will very well be in New York at least once in the next 3 years.
Yeah, kid's incredible. Yeah. But yeah, no, I have him 4-0 here.
Yeah, I do as well. September 29th, they go to Oregon State.
That's a tough one, man, but I got Utah in this one, sure.
I do too. For all the reasons I said, earlier, I think Oregon State is a very defensive team. They bring in DJ Uiagalelei, who you and I weren't extremely impressed with at Clemson, and honestly, Clemson wasn't extremely impressed with.
I'm not extremely impressed with him now. Yeah.
Yeah, last year. I do think he brings an element to that Oregon State offense that they didn't have a year ago. But for Oregon State to win, they're going to have to beat Utah at their own game, and I don't think they can.
No shot. I agree.
They go into the bye week 4-0, and then come out to play Cal at home. That's a win.
Yeah.
Then they go on the road to USC.
Yeah, I have Utah beating USC.
So
again,
back to back last year, and then again in the regular season this year.
It's a bad matchup. Again, when you can have a team like that, break them down in a way that other teams can't, right? You break down that offense and just exploit is not even the word to that defense, which most teams do. Don't get me wrong, but Utah putting up 40 in back-to-back games and just letting the throttle, right? I think they do it again. I think they do. I don't know how they do it because we've seen the blueprint for both games, but that's the exact issue as to why I haven't beating them again. Issue for USC.
Yeah, I disagree. I think this is a vengeance game for USC. Yeah. Again, with the Heisman at quarterback and all the talent they have offensively, I think they leave everything on the field and find a way to win. I don't think they win in flying colors. I think this is a close game all the way through, similar to the regular season game last year, where Utah won it because they went for 2 at the end of the game. Yeah. Like they scored late to tie it or to potentially tie it, and then went for 2. They went for the win.
Right.
I think that's something we could see out of USC. I think it's a very similar game.
Right.
The Pac12 Championship last year, USC got out to a big win. Every time we talk about this game, I have to bring it up.
To a big lead.
Yeah. They got out to a big lead, and you, because I took Utah in that game, you were just letting me hear it.
I was like, dude, it's over, right?
It's over. It was not over, and I never went away, and you bought me lunch because of it.
Yep. You wouldn't let me bring up the floor. You bought me lunch more, dude. I didn't pay for lunch all year last year.
Yes, you did. You did.
On some days, right? But where I would have possibly had to buy you lunch or vice versa, it was like 100 to 6.
That's not true.
So
no, it was bad.
So who had the winning record last year?
Tell him.
That's the real question here. Who
Tell
had
him.
the winning record?
No.
In terms of what?
Oh, please. In your head-to-head little matchups you had.
Mikey, it wasn't close.
Exactly.
But the problem is he picks these games that are completely unpredictable. He picked Florida to beat Utah last year, and he was like, "I'll bet lunch on it." And then it was the lamest thing.
I picked an unranked team to beat the number 7 team in the country,
and got bailed out.
And he won.
And got bailed out.
And got
winners
no,
win.
Bailed
man.
out's not a restaurant.
Winners win.
I got Chick-fil-A is what I got. I mean, wow. Yeah, dude. I mean, but the problem is like we would disagree on a game, and I'd be like, lunch, and he'd be like, yeah, and I had a blank record winning. Thank you. Anyway, you're right though. And look, to my credit, I have like.
To my credit
here, I'm talking about for this, right? Like, I was way wrong, and that even more so pushed me over the edge for Utah.
Yeah.
Holy crap. Did we just really do that? Did that really just happen? They did it earlier in the year, and they did it. I mean, my God. And hey, man, that's why I haven't beaten them this year.
Yeah. I understand. I agree with a lot of your points, but I think this is a vengeance game, and I think if it comes down to a last-minute score with the ball in Caleb Williams' hands, it's going to be hard for me to expect them to just play for overtime.
Yeah.
Like very similar to last year.
Right. But flip.
Yeah.
Yep.
October 28th, they get Oregon at home. I think they lose this one.
Yeah. We talked about this one in the other one. What did I have?
You had Oregon winning.
I thought so. This is a tough one, man, because I literally reacted the same way, I feel like, not 20 minutes ago. These are two very similar football teams. I think this is the Oregon statement win. For the Utah fans, it kind of sucks. I think Utah has the better football team. I think we've seen that in back-to-back years, but I think Oregon is kind of destined this year. I think all the pieces are coming together for Oregon, and this will be their statement win. Mm-hmm. And a close one.
Yeah, I had Utah winning this one.
Yeah.
I had Utah winning this one. They just for all the same reasons I said in the Oregon game. I think I don't know why I'm getting so caught up here.
This one screws me, bro. This one screws me too. They're so similar of football teams, and like you really could have a shot where they both have top 10 offenses and both have top 15 defenses. And like we're just like, well, I mean, like this could be a push. Where's the game? It's in Utah. This could be a push.
I think this is the type of game where Utah, it's so important that Brent Keithy is back.
Yeah.
Because this is one of those games where they are going to rely on it. They're going to make the linebackers of Oregon back up and create some time for Cam Rising, and then allow the receivers, the transfers, all of the targets on Utah's team.
Right.
They're going to allow them to make plays that in those routes that take a couple seconds to develop. Literally the sole reason that I'm picking Utah in this game is just because I think Cam Rising may have more time.
Yeah.
Than Bo Nix will.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think that's a fair assessment. I still got to go with Oregon.
Yeah, it's a toss-up game. If you offered me lunch on this game, I would not take it.
No, me either. I don't like it. I hate betting against Utah, and here we are. So
yeah, November 4th, Arizona State at home win. November 11th at Washington.
Yeah, I got them beating Washington. I think, again, when you can beat somebody at their own game, I think it gets done.
Yeah, again, same things. Very similar to the first Utah versus USC game last year. I think Utah is a team that would much rather play their own style. Control time of possession, be sound defensively.
Defensively, yeah.
But if you want to go blow for blow, Utah will do it.
Utah's like that, yeah.
Yeah, they're like, okay, let's go. I think this is just not one that plays well to Washington. I like Utah to win it however they need to, whether they're scoring high 40s or low 30s.
I agree.
November 18th at Arizona, I think that's a win.
Blowouts for the rest, yeah.
Yeah, and then November 25th versus Colorado, again, I think this is a big one.
Yeah, so let's get into it, right? So I have Utah and Oregon in my championship, both 11-1. So to allude to it, right? I have a one-loss conference champion coming out of the Pac-12, and making a playoff appearance. Now, who is it, right?
I don't think you do. You don't have Utah and Oregon.
I do have Utah and Oregon.
No, me and you both have Utah and Washington because we have Washington and Oregon both being. Oh, I'm sorry. No, you do. You have Oregon 11-1.
Yes.
So it is. You have Utah.
Okay. Yeah, I was confused. So I have Oregon 11-1 and Utah 11-1.
Yeah.
with a tiebreaker going to Oregon, but it doesn't matter, right? I have Utah winning the Pac-12 again, avenging their loss against Oregon. It's tough. And to me, right, that's a playoff berth. It depends on what goes on in the ACC, but, I mean, you're 11-1 and avenge your only loss. You got a really good shot as a conference champion.
Oh, I think they're in.
Yeah, me too. And
With
again,
wins over USC, Washington, and Oregon, I think they're in.
Yeah. Now, to me, there's only one exception, and I still wouldn't like it. It still wouldn't feel right to me. It would be a one-loss, non-conference champion Georgia team. But that's rough. To me, right, Utah has to be in. One-loss conference champion, you avenge your only loss. However, if you have a 12-1 Georgia team whose loss is in the conference championship, I don't know why I didn't finish it. If you're on the committee, I'm not talking about what they should. Who are you putting in there? It being Georgia, not Bama, not LSU. It being a Georgia football team who's 12-1 with a conference championship loss.
The loss being in the conference championship?
Correct.
I think at that point,
so it doesn't matter.
I think at that point, you're looking at, I think you're pretty much excluding the Big 12 in that scenario because I already know what you did with Florida State.
Yeah.
But
I am excluding the Big 12 to answer your question.
No, you would have to be excluding the ACC because you have Florida State as a 2-loss. You have them as a 2-loss conference champion.
Yes.
So you would be excluding them.
That's also correct.
You would be taking the Big 10 champion, assuming they're 12-0.
The SEC
or 13-0 at that point.
Yeah.
The SEC champion.
Yep.
Georgia.
Who it doesn't matter, right? And that's, I'm not saying this will happen, but in this scenario, we'll call it Bama, right? We'll call it Bama, who's a 1-loss or undefeated, it doesn't matter, conference champion, they're in no matter what. You have the Big 10, I'm not worried about even explaining why. And then you have...
Well, no, but you should, because if you...
because another team has to get in. Another team would have to get in for the Big 10 or else it won't matter. Georgia and Utah get in.
Unless you get a 1-loss conference champion out of the Big 12.
Or ACC. Well, it won't be the Big 12. It would have to be the ACC, in my opinion.
But my point is you have Florida State winning the ACC with 2 losses. So assuming your prediction, the ACC would be out in that scenario.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And you're right, though. And I also have the Big 12 out. So it would have to be either 2 Pac-12 teams. Not going to happen. It would have to be 2 SEC teams and a Big 10 team and Utah. Yeah, 11-1 they're in.
Yeah,
I have now backed myself out of that corner. 11-1 they're in.
I agree.
I'm sorry, 12-1 they're in.
Yeah. So for the Pac-12 championship, I have Utah and Washington. Mm-hmm. I have Utah as the standalone 11-1 team because again I had USC 9-3.
Right.
Utah standalone is 11-1, and then I have Oregon and Washington both 10-2, but Washington has the tiebreaker. So Utah and Washington, I gave Utah the win in the regular season. I don't know what I would predict here. It would be a second time around. Both teams would now have film. I think this would be a very interesting one. But we saw this play out last year with USC and Utah.
Correct. And this is why, and I've said it a trillion times, I'm almost sounding like a broken record. This is why Utah's coaching and being able to play, again, anybody's game is working in their favor. It's hard to beat a good team twice, yes, but it's even harder to beat a good team twice that can beat you however the hell they want to.
Yeah.
In your scenario, and I know this doesn't matter because it's not mine, I'm taking Utah there still.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. If Washington – I'm not even going to pick that game. I have no clue. I picked Utah to win the regular season one, but who knows if they meet again. Yeah. If Washington were to win the Pac-12 championship as a 10-2 team, in my assumption, they would be out, in my opinion. I think they'd be 5 or 6.
Right.
If Utah would win it as 12-1, they'd be in.
You're in, yeah. I don't think there's a scenario where you're not in at 12-1 as a conference champion.
I agree.
From any conference, unless there's somehow 12-1.
Unless they're all 12-1.
And I don't think there's any shot that's the case.
Yeah.
So,
I'm with you. Now, that being said, I think the Big Ten championship, I think the Big Ten champion will be 12-1 after the Big Ten championship.
I would agree.
I
disagree, but
they would have 1 loss max.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
Yes.
Depending on who comes out of this, in my assumption, Washington or Utah. If it's Washington, they would be 2 losses. I have Florida State as a 1-loss conference champion. We haven't picked the SEC necessarily yet. I do have LSU and Georgia again in the SEC championship. If Georgia were to win that, obviously they're in, and LSU would get their second loss. If LSU wins, they're now a one-loss SEC champion, and Georgia has their one loss from.
Has to be in.
Yeah. So, but in that scenario, again, you would have a one-loss. You'd have a one-loss Big Ten champion, a one-loss ACC champion, a one-loss SEC champion, in Georgia.
And a one-loss Pac-12 champion.
And a one-loss Pac-12 champion, and then
And Georgia's 5.
a Georgia team who had had the best regular season of all of them.
So back to it. You explained it better than me, and now we're at least on the same page because you helped me get there. Who's in?
That's what I'm saying.
Does Georgia – I'm asking you. Does Georgia get in? So first of all, to me, the Pac-12 is the least respected when it comes to that.
I think if it's Utah, if Utah wins as a 12-1 champion, they're in over Georgia in that scenario. But if Washington wins as a 10-2 champion, Georgia's in.
And it's not close. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But to put it to rest, a 12-1
now, granted,
Utah.
Throw all of this out. I'm comfortable saying right now Georgia is going to be in the college football playoff.
Yeah, and I think they win the SEC.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed. But a 12-1 conference champion out of the Pac-12, whoever that may be, doesn't matter who, is going to get in over a 12-1 non-conference champion Georgia team.
Yeah.
You're comfortable with saying that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so also,
it's raw. To me, if I'm on the committee, it makes sense. Yes, we have to value a conference championship, but damn, I don't think anyone in the country is going to look at those two teams then and say that Pac-12 champion is going to beat that Georgia team. Mm-hmm. But I could be wrong.
Yeah. This is where it gets tricky. I think with 2 losses, I don't think we see a 2-loss team in the playoffs this year. Simply because it's unprecedented. We haven't seen it in the entire playoff era. And because of the scheduling, we would have to see a 2007 type year where the number 2 team loses every single week. I don't think there's a way we see more than 2 conference champions with 2 or more losses.
I agree. Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm looking at. We did have some takes in the live. Somebody said, so Bryce Kuhn said Pac-12 is the deepest conference in 2023.
I mean, a resounding no. The reason being is because they're very top heavy. I don't think they're even the most top heavy conference. I think they sit somewhere in the middle. I could confidently say, as they were in 22 and as they will be in 23, they will be the worst conference in college football overall. They will have the worst record in college football, just like they did last year.
I don't think he worded this question the way he
wanted to.
Yeah,
right.
I don't think he typed what he meant, because again, when you look at 2022, you had USC, who was 11-1 in the regular season, and then you had a 4-way tie of teams who were all 9-3 and were really good, who just happened to beat each other up.
Right, 10-2. They were 10-2.
Were they?
Yeah.
Okay, so they were all 10-2. Whatever. Regardless,
right.
I think the problem with that conference is you have a lot of you really do. You have a lot of good teams, but none of them are quite elite.
Right.
Even with Utah beating USC twice last year, they went to the Rose Bowl and got smoked by Penn State.
Yeah.
I think you have a conference of a bunch of really good teams, and then there's a clear tier break, and there's a bunch of really bad teams.
Yeah.
But nobody in that conference is really elite. Now, I think what would have been better to say is Pac-12 has the steepest drop-off. Because I would
disagree with that as well. I think it's a less hot take, but I would also disagree with that one. I think the steepest drop-off – maybe you're right. Over the Big Ten. I would agree with that.
Yeah. Now, granted, that's an entirely different statement than what he said.
Completely. Said, you just had a take, right?
Pac-12 is the deepest conference in 2023. I don't know. All right, so let's go through it. There's Utah, there's Oregon State, there's Washington, there's USC.
There's UCLA.
Depending on what we get out of UCLA, I don't really know what to expect. Depending on what we get out of UCLA, hey, that's 6 teams that are solid, if nothing else. I mean,
solid is a good word.
But that's 6 teams deep. I think when you let's look at the Big Ten. They have more teams that are solid that I think could play well in the Pac-12. Yeah, I think I just have to disagree.
The key is you have to look at the SEC. The key you're going to have maybe less than 6 teams. Maybe it's 5, but all 5 of those teams are manhandling all 5 of those Pac-12 teams. You know what I mean? So that's you have a similar situation, but they're better.
I don't necessarily think manhandling. I think if they were to all play, the SEC would have a better record against them.
I mean, if you look at the top 4 teams, it's not really super close.
You're going
Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, LSU. And that's leaving off Ole Miss. That's leaving off A&M. And, of course, A&M last year was a little bit of a fluke. But, I mean, you're a lot more top-heavy, elite-wise on that side of things.
Yeah, I think if you plug South Carolina into the Pac-12, they'd be mixed in here.
I agree. And that's my point.
Yeah.
I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah.
They'd be right there with USC and UCLA. They'd be above UCLA. They'd be, like, somewhere in the 4 or 5 slot.
All right, another take we got from @SpearNation on Instagram. Clearly a Florida State account. He said FSU's going 11-1. This was my prediction.
I don't really disagree either.
I have Florida State losing the week 1 matchup to LSU, but I have them beating Clemson in the regular season and then beating Clemson again in the ACC championship.
I don't have them as my ACC champion. I think I've wavered on this opinion. I think I've gone back and forth. I don't know that to be true though. I'm probably going to take Clemson to avenge a loss. I like the 11-1 in the regular season, but I don't think they're the conference champion.
Okay, so in our record prediction on Instagram and on the show even,
right.
You took Clemson to beat Florida State in the regular season and then Florida State to avenge that loss.
That's the problem. I'm so flip-flop with those games.
You think they split?
I think they split. I just don't know where.
Yeah. You like Florida State to get to the ACC championship, and you like them to split with Clemson. You just don't know where the wins come.
So in his defense, in his point, right? We both have them losing to LSU. I think they dropped that game for sure. Now moving on, I'll let him pick his poison. Do you want a 10-2 conference champion, or do you want an 11-1 non-con? So I agree, or I'll disagree with you, and you'll be sad, but I'll give you a conference championship for it. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Because I have them splitting Clemson.
Yeah. All right. I think that's all we got for today. We'll be back on.
How many yards does Corum rush for? That was another one we got earlier.
That's true. We did get that one.
We had a lot more. That was just another one I thought off the top of my head.
How many yards does Blake Corum rush for at Michigan? He shared a backfield with Donovan Edwards. I think he's easily a 1,000-yard rusher.
Oh, my God, yes.
But I think Donovan Edwards probably has 700, 800 yards of his own.
Right.
Go ahead and throw out the number you said.
I said I could see him running for 1,800 yards.
Yeah, I think that's crazy.
I think they probably lead the country in rushing yards this year.
I think if he runs for if he has 1,800 yards, he's got to be in New York as the second or third high.
Is that crazy?
I mean, I don't think it's crazy for him to end up in New York at the end of the year. I think expecting anybody preseason, especially sharing a backfield with a top 5 running back in the country like Donovan Edwards, at least in my opinion, is crazy.
But you said it's not crazy for him to end up in New York. Let's fast forward, snap, boom, he's in New York. What did he rush for? If he's in New York.
1,300.
Oh, you don't make it to New York with 1,300 yards. Not with this quarterback class we have.
But with maybe he had a bunch of touchdowns.
We had 1,600-yard rushers last year. Do you think he leads the country in rushing?
I think he's top 5.
I think it's.
But the problem is, I can't even confidently say that he's going to lead the country in rushing because he shares a backfield with such a good running back in Donovan Edwards.
I mean, he would have led the country in rushing last year, or been top 5 had he not been hurt, right?
I get it.
So we'll see. I'm not thinking he rushes for 1,800. I think it's very, very, very doable. If I was going to put money, it'd be 1,650 or 17.
Yeah.
I think he goes really, really, really dumb. Because I mean he's 100% now. So
yeah,
barring injury.
I'm not saying that if he was plugged into he is the premier back, he is the feature back. I understand all that.
No doubt.
But what I'm not saying is that if he were to get all the carries all year, he could rush for 1,800 yards. Of course he could.
Yeah.
He's that good.
Right.
I'm saying I don't think he's going to get that kind of workload.
Right.
Yeah.
I get that. And then the other question, and this is a very odd one, and just another one I think off the top of my head. Who has a better Heisman shot, Joe Milton or Spencer Rattler, and why?
Ooh, I think Joe Milton.
Me too.
And look, again, we haven't seen a bunch of Joe Milton. We talked on the news segment last week. We talked about how there were a couple people saying that Joe Milton was the most talented quarterback in the country.
Joe.
I think that's a crazy take. But I think in this scenario, Tennessee will probably end with a better record. And I'd expect Joe Milton to throw for more yards. So I think that's a very clear answer.
I agree. And I think he protects the ball. I know he protects the ball a lot better.
You don't know. We haven't seen him play.
From what I've seen, he'll throw less picks, in my opinion.
Okay.
And yes, I think team success has a lot to do with it. And I have Tennessee finishing a whole lot higher than South Carolina.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with
That's
you.
all I can remember right off the top of my head.
I'm with you.
Oh, and then, I mean, if you want one more.
Go ahead.
Last
One more.
The Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan triangle, which I know you did predict.
Yeah.
Another guy said Penn State was going to be the conference champion.
Yeah, I'm not
No.
taking Penn State to win the conference,
No.
but I think there's a three-way tie there that could get tricky.
Yeah.
In my predictions, I had Ohio State beating Michigan, Michigan beating Penn State beating Michigan.
11-1.
I'm sorry, Penn
11-1,
State beating
11-1.
Ohio State.
Yeah.
All 11-1 at the end of the year. I don't know who would go in that scenario.
It would go to conference record, but they all have the same conference record. It would go to
And then it would go to what points
division
at that
record,
point?
right? But again,
They would all have the same division record. It was very similar to what happened in the Pac-12
Points or
last
points
year.
differential?
I think it would be points differential.
Okay.
So in that,
And again, I don't know.
yeah, in that case, I wouldn't know.
In that case, yeah, what product? It would be Michigan, probably.
Yeah,
I would assume, just because of how good their defense is.
maybe.
But yeah, man, I don't know.
I don't know. That would be a crazy scenario though, and it's what I predicted. So
And it's real playoff implications.
yeah,
So I'd actually like to see that play out. I don't think it will, but I'd like to see it play out. I think that'd be dope.
yeah.
Because one of those teams goes.
Look, I think the winner of the Big Ten East wins the conference. So in that scenario, depending on point differential, it's not crazy. In this scenario, it's not crazy to say Penn State.
Yeah, and the winner of the
Can't
Big Ten
win.
East goes to the playoffs as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that would be crazy. 11-1 throughout. Yeah,
yeah.
that's all I got, man.
All right, that's all I got. Thank y'all for watching. Thank y'all for watching this episode. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Follow us on Instagram. We're posting every single day. If you follow us, we're shooting you a DM, all that kind of stuff. You're welcome to. We're gonna start doing this. This is a new thing. We just started it, but before the show, every time we record before the show, we're going to go live. We're going to take questions. We're going to feature them on the show as our 10-second takes. So if you want to be featured on there, we'll shout you out, your Instagram, all that kind of stuff, or your name if you don't want us to use your Instagram at whatever. But like, comment, subscribe, stay along for the ride.